Welcome everybody to our latest C-band Lunch and Learn webinar. I'm Curtis Dean. You see Todd Kilkoff there in the little window, who is one of the co-founders of C-band. I'm in my usual domestic lair in my office. Todd is working remotely today from, you want to break it to him or should I?
Destin, Florida.
Yay, Florida.
Needed some thought mapping.
Yeah, so. That's what you got behind you, right? My thought map consists of a wall that's got too much stuff on it. So it is great that some people got to go out and enjoy a spring break getaway. And if you didn't, you're like me and you're in your office. Well, welcome to Iowa in the winter, although we might see sun by the end of the weekend. Let's just hope so. Our topic today is the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program that was approved by Congress, is being administered by the FCC and USAC. So we will be going through that in a high level today, so to get you some familiarity with it. As always, though, I do want to put a little plug in for our little organization called C-band, the Community Broadband Action Network. I know there are folks that are on this session who are C-band members, so thank you very much for being a C-band member. And I also know there are some folks that probably aren't, and we would love to have you on board as a C-band member. The really cool thing about it is that several of our classifications of membership are absolutely free. If you're a community trying to get better broadband or trying to solve some of the broadband deficits and gaps you have in your community can be a C-band community member at no charge. If you are a broadband provider that is already offering excellent service in communities in your region, and you have that strong focus on customer care and community involvement, then you can join as a provider member. Advocate members are individuals that are out there trying to advocate for better broadband, as the name might imply. And so we also have not only individuals, we have organizations such as the Iowa Finance Authority that are C-band advocate members. So you're welcome to join that as well. And then we also have companies that sell products or services in this space, and they can be an associate member. Dues are reasonable, and they are also prorated to the beginning of the year. So anybody that's on the call today that's interested in joining C-band, we welcome you to go to our website. It's broadbandaction.com. Click the Join C-band link, find out more, fill out the application, and after careful consideration, Todd and I will probably let you join. So we also want to mention that normally at this time, I will preview the next month's Lunch and Learn webinar. We haven't quite nailed it down yet. So I would just say be watching your emails for that. As soon as we get the details nailed down on an April Lunch and Learn date, time, topic, then we'll get that out to everybody as well. All right, so here we go. We're going to talk about the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, and we're going to take a look at this from two different perspectives. We're going to look at it from the perspective of you, the provider, for those of you who are on that provide broadband services. We're going to look at it a little bit from the consumer angle, because there's definitely an intersection there between the provider and the consumer, and we want to address that a bit. But this is not designed to be the all-tell, everything you need to know about it and we're afraid to ask. This is more of a high-level overview. So again, we want to talk about the program, provide that high-level overview, outline some of the benefits to consumers, discuss reasons why providers might want to participate, really get into the who, what, where, when, and how, and we'll leave the how for later. So in other words, this is not a how to apply to be part of the program. We will talk about the resources that are available to help you with that, but it really kind of goes beyond the scope of what C-band does. We just want to make sure everybody's aware of what it is. And in addition to the resources, like the online resources we'll talk about, you've got great people that are providing advisory services for you that can probably help you through this process. A few of them are on the call here, and I'll just point out the folks at Consortia, because I know they're on the call, and this is something that they are helping some of their clients do right now. So I might even ask them to chime in at some point. But there are lots of resources out there. We just want to maybe help you figure out why you should do it, and also figure out where those resources are. So detailed instructions or assistance are available. As I mentioned, we're not going to get too deep in that in this conversation, but there's a really good resource on the USAC. USAC is Universal Service Administrative Company, and they have a website, a web page that's all about the broadband benefit program that really has quite a few details on it. And I use that mainly as my resource to put this presentation together. So again, you can wade through it yourself. It seems to me, after looking at the paperwork that is needed, that it is something that is probably most broadband providers are capable of doing, either in-house or working with a regulatory advisor. So it's not, it's paperwork and dealing with the federal government's always a bit scary, but this one to me didn't seem like it is absolutely something that would stop you from participating. I'll actually go and show that USAC site here in just a couple of minutes and help you show you how to navigate around it. So here's kind of the high level overview of the program. What the heck is this thing? Well, earlier this year, Congress allocated, as part of their budget reconciliation process they went through, that included $3.2 billion from Congress that was assigned to basically help people who don't have access to broadband in the age of COVID and would benefit from having it to get it. Now, we're not talking people who don't have it because there's no broadband at their house. This program is not designed to build networks. This program is designed to provide persons who are on limited incomes with financial wherewithal to be able to afford broadband service. So this is really part of the COVID-19 response that we've seen several waves of from the federal government over the past year or so. It's not completely dissimilar to what the state of Iowa did in its broadband program late last summer, where they made monies available for adoption programs that were centered on COVID relief, especially for consumers that needed broadband for work or for education or for health, but didn't have the money to do it. There are a number of providers in Iowa that actually applied for and received funding through that Iowa Broadband Grant Program to facilitate that. So it's not unlike that, but it is a little different because this is coming down from the federal level. So the funds are going to be available beginning in April. Nobody said exactly when, but everybody, at least the FCC, USAC, are all trying to get everything, all the rules written, all the details ironed out before April so that they can launch this program. Again, this is aimed at COVID relief. And since we are all hoping, knock on wood, that COVID will come to an end at some point, they want to get this out as quick as possible. So those funds will be available from when they get started to whenever either the money runs out, $3.2 billion, or until the pandemic is declared over 6 months after that. So when the Health and Human, I think Health and Human Services makes the official declaration that the pandemic is now at an end, they'll start a clock 6 months from that. That's when the program will end. It is my suspicion that that's probably still a long time out, because they probably won't declare the pandemic over until at least, a vast majority of Americans have been vaccinated. So we might still be, this program might still be in place a year from now. It may be more likely that it runs out of money before then, but that doesn't mean that Congress couldn't allocate more money to this if they chose to. But right now it's considered temporary.
However, when we do know that there's components, our Congresswoman Cindy Axne about that this is a key component, so that it feels like this could be a test run.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit there, Todd, so I'll just kind of say what you said in different words probably. But yes, there is a lot of attention being paid to some sort of more permanent broadband subsidy for low to moderate income households, which would probably be administered in a similar way. And like Todd said, this could be a good test case for whether that more permanent long-term project comes into place. Funding is always going to be the challenge there, right? Because while this is coming out of special appropriations out of the general fund of the United States government, um, a more permanent program probably would be somehow funded through the same sources of funding for the Connect America Fund and the current Lifeline program. So that's a really good point. Good test run. But again, this one itself is COVID focused. So what would this mean for consumers? Well, the consumer that is eligible and applies and is accepted would essentially get a $50 a month discount, up to $50 a month on their broadband internet service. And if they happen to live in a tribal area, and we don't have a lot of tribal areas in Iowa, but there are a few, and certainly around the nation, there are a lot, then it could be worth to up to $75 per month. Now, if a person subscribes to a $40 internet plan, they're not going to pocket $10 out of this. It would be capped at whatever they're paying. But there aren't that many providers that have a service below $50 a month, so it's going to be up to $50. So if your bottom line internet, your base internet package is $60 a month, the consumer would basically get a $50 knocked off of that, and they would owe you $10. Now you're going to then, the provider is going to then get reimbursed for that $50 credit. So think about this as, for those of you who are already doing Lifeline, this is like Lifeline on COVID-induced steroids. It is going to be a similar process for getting reimbursed. In addition to this $50 a month credit that the consumer would get, there is also a component in here whereby a provider could sell a device to a consumer, and that consumer would get a discount on that device. Now, the way it works is that discount is $100. It would be to purchase a laptop, a desktop computer, or a tablet from the provider. Now, they can't go to Best Buy and get this. They're going to have to buy it from you, the provider. The consumer would have to contribute at least $10 toward the cost of that, or up to $50 toward the cost of that. Now, when you start doing math, you realize you're not going to get much of a laptop or a computer in someone's hands for $150. I really don't think many providers are even going to do this part of the program because most providers, a good chunk of providers anyway, don't do retail sales of equipment. They rent stuff to people, they lease stuff to people, they include equipment in their agreement, but they don't sell computers or TVs or that sort of thing. So it would require a provider doing this to probably, have some inventory and do that. Second of all, there's not much you could get for that. You're probably talking you could get an internet connected tablet certainly for that, but maybe a really low end Chromebook, but probably not much more than that. And again, it would have to be the provider is selling that to the consumer. So you, the provider, would have to buy it somewhere, some supply house that either you work with already or good old fashioned Amazon. So again, I don't see that being a big part of this program as far as providers adopting it. The consumer is going to be limited to one monthly service discount per month and one device discount per household. So if there are people living in a household that are on different programs, that household's only going to get this once, no matter how many people in that household qualify under these programs. So, there's not going to be double dipping. And again, it's one of the reasons they're going to be using the National Lifeline eligibility verifier to check on consumer eligibility. They don't want people getting this subsidy twice by any means. So if you're already part of the Lifeline program, and I know several of you on the call are, then this process will be similar to that, to my understanding, and final rules still have to come out, but it will not be dissimilar from it. If you're not in the Lifeline program, in other words, you never went through the process to become an ETC, eligible telecommunications carrier, and you haven't participated in the existing Lifeline, both either for telephone or internet later, you can still do this program. And so we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. So again, the consumer eligibility, that consumer has to qualify essentially for the Lifeline program. That's one way. And there's several different ways they can qualify. Either the Lifeline program, if they receive benefits for free or school reduced lunch program, either in the current year or in last school year. And for example, I know some of the providers that did the state broadband grant and used that to provide that subsidy to consumers did it based on the free or reduced school lunch program. So not to name names, but I will, because I helped them with it. Vinton, for example, the school district sent out a letter to all of the households that they had that were in the city limits that were under a free or reduced school lunch program through the school district. And then those persons had the opportunity then to enroll in that and get that discount on their bill. So that is one way that can happen. If the household has a person who received a federal Pell Grant during the current award year, they would be eligible. If they experience substantial loss of income since February 29th of 2020 and they can demonstrate it, they would be eligible. That's going to be a little stickier part of it, I believe. So I think that that one we're going to need to see some more details on, because does this mean you're going to be sitting across from a table as somebody showing you their tax records? I'm not sure. That would be one that I'm still a little uncertain on. And if they meet the eligibility under an existing low income program you have, then that same eligibility could be used for this one. So I mentioned Vinton, for example. Vinton could say, we use these criteria for that state broadband program grant. We could use those same criteria for this one, which could streamline it. So these are the different ways that they're going to measure the consumer eligibility. Now, providers, I mentioned this a little bit already, but this is open to anybody that provides broadband internet. If you are already an ETC, eligible telecommunication carrier, participating in the Lifeline program, you can do it. If you have not ever enrolled in Lifeline, you're not an ETC, you can still participate in this program, but you got a little more work to do that. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So essentially, if you're already an ETC, the primary step you have to do is to fill out an election notice with USAC. And I'll show you what that application looks like here in a little bit. And once you're approved for that, then, and the monies are there and they give everybody the authority to go ahead, then you could start doing this program. Now, obviously, that's not all you have to do. You're going to have some internal discussion about how you're doing it. You're going to have discussion about your internal rules about how you handle paperwork and how you administer this, and informing your customer service people and your technicians about how this works. But it's a single step on the federal level. That is through the USAC. If you're not an ETC, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have to seek approval from the FCC's Wireline Bureau. And they've got really two different types of approval they can give. Automatic is if you already have an existing program for low income subsidy or benefit for broadband, then you can basically tell them you do, show them that, and you'll be automatically introduced into the considered approved. If you don't, then they have what they're calling the expedited program, where you would fill out some additional paperwork and then they would let you in. And I think as long as you meet the qualifications that they have, and again, I'm not going to dive too deep into that today, you'll be able to get in. I don't see the FCC turning a lot of providers down, because their mission is to get this money into the hands of consumers or onto the bills of consumers as soon as possible. And then after you've gotten that FCC approval, then you would do the USAC election notice, just like the ETCs would do. All right. Before you apply, though, you got to have a few things in place. Now, many of you, if not most of you, have these things, but I just wanted to mention them because they can be a bit of a bugaboo. I know there's a community I worked with here in Iowa that wanted to do business with the federal government for the first time. It was for a federal contract for services. And the hoops you had to jump through to get this done, just to get them hooked up, was kind of a pain. But you got to have a DUNS number. You got to have an FCC registration number, or FRN. If you're doing cable, you're probably doing that already, or you probably already have one. And even if you're not doing cable, you might have one. You need to register under the System for Award Management, or SAM. Probably the nicest sounding acronym the federal government has. Is, how can you get mad at SAM, right? He's just a guy. And then again, the non-ETCs have additional step to complete, because they're going to have to first go to the FCC and then go to USAC. So I'm going to stop the screen share for just a second, the dog and pony, so to speak, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other things to consider here. Let me see. First of all, I'm going to show you the USAC website that they have set up for the program. Yeah, you might not be seeing that correctly. Let me move things around here. Okay, you should be seeing that. This is the USAC website page for just the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. So it's got a nice description of the program. You can go and read the full report and order by the FCC if you've got a few hours to kill, what USAC's role is, et cetera. Now, there's you can also click these links to see which households are eligible, how to get started. I would recommend what I did, which is to watch their webinars that were already recorded about this program. They have a kind of an introductory one, which is this first one here, kind of a getting started. And then they have another one that goes a little deeper on that. So if you're going to be administering this locally at your own utility with your own staff, then this would be helpful for them to go through it and watch these videos before you do it. Before you get started. They also have application and eligibility resources here. Again, these are the things like what are the household eligibility, how to get back to that FCC page on the broadband program, the broadband benefit program. And then if you've not ever used the National Lifeline Accountability Database, they have some resources here on how to do that. So again, that is the USAC page. I'll put that web address up again here in a little bit, but basically it's, if you go to USAC and you look for Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, you'll get there. Okay. So that's the USAC website. This is the actual USAC form that you would fill out. I think you can see that now. Todd, give me a heads up. Maybe not. Maybe I need to stop share and reshare. We'll try that. So basically this is, I'm just going to show you what if you're already an ETC, then you would fill out this form. If you're not an ETC, first you get the FCC approval and then you do this form. So I want to show you what that looks like. Okay, I'll find the right one here. Okay, now you should be seeing the USAC Emergency Broadband Benefit Program Service Provider Election Form. So this is the thing you would fill out. And I just wanted to show it because it actually doesn't look as bad as I thought it would when I first dived in. You say, are you an ETC already? Or are you an ETC with non-ETC affiliates? Or are you just a non-ETC? And basically it's a fill in the blank PDF. There again, you got to have your FRN, you got to have your DUNS number, you have to have an EIN. Most of you have those already, so that shouldn't be a big deal. If you are an ETC, a non-ETC, you have to get FCC approval. They're going to ask for that approval number. SPIN if you're an ETC already, and again, lots of details about your company. And then they ask you about, your approval. Are you going to do connected devices or not? Yes or no. Are you going to use the national verifier or some other means to verify? Are you in tribal lands, prepaid services, all these questions. Then it gets into what are your service offerings and where? Because obviously big companies with service offerings all over the place will fill in multiple. And so you might have one state with both fixed and mobile. Most of you are going to be fixed, I would assume. But again, this is something where mobile operators, I believe, are going to probably suck up a lot of this subsidy if they are eligible. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You got to read the rules, sign it off. You send that to USAC, and then they will hopefully approve you in short order and in time to get things rolling. So what does that mean? What does get some things rolling mean? Well, let me close the window here so I can share again. Okay. It's fun to watch others struggle with technology, isn't it? All right. So before you apply, again, I mentioned that already, so I'll move on to the next one. So I want to talk a little bit about why you would do this. First of all, the deadline to apply for what they're calling the expedited process. In other words, if you want to make sure that you're ready and approved at the same time they launch the program officially in April, then they want this done by the 26th. My read of the rules indicate that if you got it done later than that, you'd still be eligible to participate as a provider. It's just that you might not be able to offer the subsidy as soon. That may or may not be a big deal to people. Again, I would defer on some of this if you're working with a regulatory advisor to reach out to them and say, hey, I don't have a lot of room to do this in the next week. What's the absolute cutoff to get it done? But I want to talk a little bit about why you should, or maybe why you wouldn't participate in this program, because I think it's really important. So the reasons you should participate are, I think, pretty clear. Number one, it will help persons in your community because they are financially maybe struggling. They may already be your subscribers, but it's been hard to pay that bill while they've ridden out reduced employment or unemployment or other increased expenses just to live in the past year with COVID's impact. So it is going to help people in your community. It doesn't have an ongoing cost to you, the provider. The short-term cost is, yeah, you're going to give the credit and you're going to wait some period of time to get the reimbursement from USAC. But in the end, the dollars should true up. Doesn't mean you won't have some personnel costs or maybe some costs with your advisors to help you with it, but the ongoing financial cost will be minimal. The biggest reason to do it, though, folks, in my opinion, is your competitor probably is going to do it. So since we're the Community Broadband Action Network, most of you on the call that are providers are community-based broadband providers, and you're almost all in a competitive situation with another cable company and another phone company. And of course, those companies tend to be bigger, right? So they probably have the resources it take easily to go through this application process and apply. Now, we won't know yet whether they're doing it or not until the program is launched. But I guarantee you the second the program's launched, if they're participating, you will hear about it because they will be airing commercials. They will be putting bill inserts in. They will be putting up billboards because they will see this as a way to polish their reputation with the consumers. So if you don't do it and your competitor does, then you have the potential to lose customers, and I think more significantly to lose reputation as being the good guy. Again, we won't know for some time. I mean, I'm sure that the big people aren't going to tell us ahead of time whether they're going to do this or not. But I think we all have to have the default that they are going to do it. And then how do you respond? Especially, how do you respond if you don't do it? And the reason you don't do it is because it's paperwork and it's going to take some time and maybe some writing a check to somebody to get this filled out and get it done. And we all know that none of us like that red tape. That's why a lot of times, especially smaller providers tend to shy away from participating in some of the programs that are out there. But this is one I think you need to take a good hard look at. So, Todd, did you have anything to add on that? That's me on my soapbox, by the way, and I do that once in a while. But I think that the consumer is going to benefit enough, And for those of you on the call that are providers, you got into the business for the reason of serving your community. And this is a way to serve your community at the cost of a little bit of angst over some red tape. So I'm going to hit.
It could also be a good brand extension, customer engagement effort. I don't think that the bigger players are going to be wrong in trying to use this to their advantage.
No, absolutely.
And so I think that not only should we be playing with that, there might be those that are launching or in their first 5 years, and helping somebody out. Then you get more stickiness, that you help somebody through solving a problem.
Yep.
That customer is just going to be more loyal. And I do think that you're going to see a push for continued funding at some level, whether that's more federal or whether that's state unemployment benefits flow through. But I kind of do think that there's some sentiment there that we have a public utility need. And this goes along with that same thing as low income housing or heating assistance or anything like that. So I think there's just going to be more of this. So you might as well get used to it by jumping on this one.
It's really interesting. Policymakers are spending a lot of time right now trying to tackle broadband gaps. And a lot of that time and effort and resources have gone to filling availability gaps, right? Both federal level and the state and individual states. There's been money and resources put into grants, loans, et cetera, to get broadband built where it doesn't exist today. But really, that's just one of the gaps that there are out there, right? We've talked about this a lot in some of the C-band members about, they have availability, but it's other gaps like reliability, affordability, and those other gaps that also need to be addressed. So I think federal lawmakers understand that you can solve availability, but if you got a great broadband passing by your house, but you can't afford it because your house is of limited income, or you're going through a temporary income crisis of some sort, COVID or other reasons, then that's still a gap, and that's still preventing people from taking advantage of what an internet connection can do to improve their lives. So it's not all about throwing money at new networks these days. It's also about solving the other gaps that exist out there. So if we have any questions, I want to let you know there's a couple of ways to do it. You can raise your hand and then I can call on you. That's really good if you want to talk. And I know some of you like to talk because I can see the names here. If you don't want to talk, but you just want to chime in, you can do that through the chat window or the Q&A. So if you do want to float any questions our way, we'll be glad to tackle them as best we can. And those of you that are on the webinar that know these programs better than I do, and if you want to correct anything I just said, please do so. I don't pretend to be an expert on this. I did a mini crash course in the past week to learn enough to do this webinar because it was felt important we get it off and get this information, especially in front of our C-band provider members. So yeah, fire any questions you have. I am curious as to any of you that are on the webinar that are providers today, and how many of you are not already participating in the Lifeline program. I know this has been a really, it's something you always have to consider, especially the new providers, because Lifeline as it exists today just isn't that great. In other words, I believe the monthly subsidy that now can be applied toward either telephone or broadband is less than $10. And that doesn't really close that gap enough for a lot of people. So I know a lot of providers, as they're getting into the business, you have to weigh whether or not you want to go through the steps it takes to be an eligible telecommunication carrier and then participate in Lifeline, including the reporting that is required there. So, there have been a lot of discussions, and we're hoping to do a webinar on this later in the year about how the Universal Service Fund / Connect America Fund can be revised, I should say, and be able to provide more of that support, those support dollars, not just to providers to build and operate networks, but also to benefit consumers for adoption. And it would seem to me that, as we've alluded to a couple of times, while this is a short-term program, it's not that short. It's 6 months after COVID is declared over. And I don't see that, it doesn't seem to me that they will declare COVID over until at least late in the year. So we're going to probably be dealing with this program for the next year, 10 months, or year, 15 months, something like that. And even if it does run out of money, which it could, I haven't done the math on how many households get $50 a month at 3.5 billion. But even if it does run out of money, if the program is proving to be successful and is working, i.e. getting a lot of people online that aren't or can't afford to, then that is likely to see something that Congress might prioritize additional spending toward. And then, like Todd said, it could become more of a permanent thing. So yeah, if anybody has any other questions, just raise your hand. We will not make you sit through an entire hour of this if we don't have any other feedback, because pretty much my presentation is done. I do want to put a little plug in for our C-band members though one more time. So I'm going to do that right now, by golly, since it doesn't look like we got a ton of questions left. So yeah, so just want to, before we end here, want to recognize our associate members, the Community Broadband Action Network, and these are the companies that support us financially through their memberships, and they are the ones that really help us get the resources we need to do what we've been doing. Now, of course, we've all been in seclusion for a year, so some of the things we've wanted to do as C-band we haven't been able to do, but we are tentatively planning on having a C-band, a return of the C-band annual summit, likely in October, and that will likely be in conjunction with a relaunched IAMU broadband conference, probably on one day or one side of it or the other. So we're also talking about, again, when we're able to do more things in person and travel, maybe reaching out and doing some more things regionally, even elsewhere in the country, as a way to facilitate those. There's a lot going on in Colorado. There is some action going on in Michigan with municipal broadband, and in Wisconsin, there's just a little bit going on, but there could be more. And so we want to be able to respond and help those folks as we can as well. So thank you to our C-band associate members for giving us the support we need to keep doing what we're doing, and hopefully doing more as time goes on. So I'll just check out our questions here. Todd?
Yeah, I'll just, while you're doing that, I'll plug that we have launched a more aggressive social media campaign to support the overall industry through LinkedIn. So if you see any of those posts, we're posting articles weekly about different states doing different things, as well as just how the broadband industry is evolving. So that should be able to drive also for our vendor members and others, just a larger audience for what we're.
Absolutely. And one last thing, anybody on the webinar today, if you have a topic that you think would be good for one of these lunch and learns, please just send it my way. It's just cdean@broadbandaction.com, or to Todd at tkielkoff@broadbandaction.com. And then we'll put that in our hopper. I've got a board over here you can't see, just to my left, that has about 50 different topic ideas. It's just a matter of fitting the right topic into the right slot. So we're working on that. And certainly any ideas that you might have could potentially serve to help someone else. And that's what C-band's about, right? It's about individuals and companies and providers helping others achieve better broadband. And so anything we can do to keep filling that mission, we will do. Well, thank you everybody for coming on today. Again, if you are looking for detailed assistance on this, if you already have a regulatory advisor, I would contact them. If you're looking for one, check out our C-band provider list, our associates, and you'll see companies on there that do that sort of thing. or give me a call and I'd be glad to direct you some reason. I'd love to help myself, but unfortunately I'm pretty tied up with a bunch of other projects. So with this timeline, especially, I probably won't be able to do much, but I can sure try to help you find somebody to help if you need to. So thank you everybody for joining us this month. We'll be back next month, topic to be determined. So keep watching your email and we'll get the information out. Thank you everybody. Have a great rest of March.